UFC San Diego betting and Draftkings show. We got 13 fights this Saturday. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. Kicking things off in the bantamweight division, we have Youssef Zalal dropping down a weight class, coming in as a small favorite, minus 125. The comeback on UFC newcomer Damon Blackshear is plus 105. And this is a matchup that I'm definitely interested in. For starters, Youssef Zalal was a prospect that I thought was overrated by the market coming into the UFC, had an impressive debut. The market sort of overreacted to it. He rattled off a couple big wins, but since then, he's lost 3 straight in the UFC, and now the market's sort of corrected, but I still think he's at least being a little bit overvalued in terms of this matchup because he's a guy who historically is not a great round winner when he can't mix in those takedowns. He's low volume on the feet. You can expect him to be on the back foot, dancing around the octagon, retreating for the most part, while looking to dive in and out of the pocket and land his jab. But when he mixes in the wrestling is typically when he has a strength advantage against his opponents, and that's where I see him struggling here against Damon Blackshear. I like this kid, Damon Blackshear. He's fought respectable opposition on the regional scene. He's the former Cage Fury bantamweight champion. He trains out of Jackson Wink. He's a credentialed grappler, decent wrestler, good striker. Like I expect the striking to be competitive because Zalal's going to be running a lot of this fight, and so I could see Blackshear initially struggling to cut off the cage, but I do think he's going to be landing the more impactful shots on the feet, and I do think he will be the one with the overall strength and grappling advantage. I think it's only a matter of time before he cuts off the cage for Zalal, takes him down to the mat, and that's where he's shown off some good control grappling. He will chain together submissions, but as we've seen in the past, Zalal's been able to fight out of some pretty compromising positions. So the pick is going to be Blackshear by decision, because I expect Zalal to maybe be able to fight out of a couple submissions here, but we'll see. A submission wouldn't shock me, but I am going decision here for Blackshear. Either way, I'm going to bet him at the money line. I'm waiting now because it seems like there's still a little bit of a Zalal money coming in, so I'm going to be betting Blackshear as the underdog here, waiting around for a little bit better plus money, but he's the pick. And up next, we have a fight that was originally booked last week, Josh Quinlan against Jason Witt. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I covered it in depth on last week's video, so I'll just give you guys the short version in case you missed last week. But Josh Quinlan fought on last season of Dana White Contender Series, looked good, fought a guy on short notice who wasn't very good, knocked him out inside of the first round, inside of like a minute. Seems to be pretty powerful, did fail a drug test and served a USADA suspension prior to this fight, but now he's going up against Jason Witt. We know the story with Jason Witt. He's going to look for takedowns. He averages a bunch of takedowns per 15 minutes. The problem is his durability. He's been knocked out 6 times in his career. He simply cannot take a punch. And this guy Quinlan, not only is he powerful, but he has a little bit of a wrestling background as well. He's got some strong hips. I expect him to be able to stuff a couple takedowns, and it's only a matter of time. Even if Witt has a takedown or two early, it's only a matter of time before Quinlan touches the chin here, and I think puts him out. So give me Quinlan by knockout, and he's going to be a strong play on DraftKings this week. Up next, we have the only flyweight scrap of the card as Osborne comes in as a sizable favorite, minus 245. The comeback on Tyson Nam is plus 205. And I got to lean with the Osborne side here. I'm generally a fan of Osborne. He's an exciting fighter, fights very electric. 9 out of his last, I believe 10 fights have ended inside of the first round, which is insane for the flyweight division. Obviously, cash big on the under in the Zaruk Adashev a few months back in that fight, which was nice. But in terms of this matchup, Osborne, I think, is just going to be a lot faster than Tyson Nam here. Tyson Nam is a low-volume, one-dimensional power puncher. Yes, he can find a knockout shot, but he's typically just not doing enough. He's waiting to time that big counter shot, and I think Osborne's too fast that he's going to be able to avoid the big power of Tyson Nam here. So on the feet, either guy can get clipped, either guy can win by knockout, but I favor the durability and the speed of Osborne. And then if he decides to grapple, which I'm not banking that he will, but if he were to grapple here, I think he could cover this price tag. But because you can't really trust him to do that, I don't think you can bet him at this number. I wouldn't parlay him either, just because there is a lot of variance in this fight, even though it is flyweight. Like I said, you know, these guys are going to stand and trade. They both have a bunch of knockouts on their record, but I got to go with the Osborne side. I think he's a high upside play on DraftKings this week as well. Next fight up, we have Gabriel Mowgli Benitez coming in as a minus 350 favorite. The comeback on Charlie Ontiveros is plus 290. And this one, I think, is pretty straightforward. You know, obviously, Ontiveros, the durability is a giant red flag. He's been knocked out in all 8 of his professional losses. The dude simply does not, anytime he faces any form of adversity, he just doesn't want to be there anymore. He's been knocked out cold multiple of those 8 knockouts, but other times it just seems like he was looking for a way out. It seems like kind of a softball matchup for Benitez, who's had kind of a tough run of opponents here recently, and that's why it's concerning seeing him as a big favorite price tag, because the durability is definitely starting to go on the Benitez side. He has not looked great over his last couple fights, and he's been knocked out, so the durability's been in question on both sides, which just adds another layer of variance to this matchup. But I still have to side with Benitez, because skill for skill, I think he's much better. Even having to deal with like a 7 or 8 inch reach advantage here, Ontiveros is going to be very long for the division. He's going to be throwing those long kicks, but I just think Benitez is going to be able to be the more technical fighter until he finds that knockout punch. So I'm going to target a little bit of Ontiveros on DraftKings, just because I think he could be one of the lower owned fighters on a 13 fight slate who does have real knockout upside in a victory, but I'm not going to go crazy with it. I definitely think Benitez probably catches him at some point and puts him out. But in terms of DraftKings, I'm definitely going to look to be overweight on the underdog here and hope for the upset. Which brings us to our next fight in the heavyweight division. We have Martin Buday, a -250 favorite. The comeback on Lucas Brzeski is +210, and these are both Dana White Contender Series graduates. Martin Buday won his UFC debut against Chris Barnett a few months back. Lucas Brzeski is making his UFC debut after a 3rd round controversial finish on Dana White's Contender Series. He actually popped hot against USADA, served a 9-month suspension as well, similar to Josh Quinlan. But so he's making his UFC debut here. I don't think Brzeski's very good. I really don't even think Buday is very good. I think these are both low-level heavyweights. This fight definitely has a tendency to get a little bit sloppy, as both of these guys kind of have that fighting style. Lucas Brzeski, a lot of first-round knockouts, a lot of first-round finishes, but most of them came against super low-level competition. Not that Buday is this massive step up for him here, but I do think Buday is just the more skilled fighter, especially over 15 minutes. Buday has some things that I think we can count on here. I think he should be able to control Brzeski against the cage, a lot of cage push and just wear on him before he mixes in the takedowns as well, and just kind of takes over as the fight goes on, potentially getting a late ground and pound stoppage. So give me Buday by knockout in this one, but in terms of DraftKings, I'm not super confident either way. I think this fight just has a really wide range of outcomes. So I'm probably leaning towards getting under the field, but we'll see what ownerships come in at. As always, I'll have ownership projections on my website, fightnumbers.com, available for everybody. It's completely free. Check that out after this video. But yeah, it's probably going to be one that I'm looking to get under the field and just hope it turns into a classic heavyweight slop fest that goes the full 15 minutes. Next fight up, we have Godinez coming in as a -325 favorite, and Angela Hill on the comeback at +270. And come on now, it's Loopy season. I think Loopy steamrolls her here. I think if she were to fight the world's dumbest game plan and not implement the takedowns, the wrestling, the grappling, I think she should probably still win this fight, even if it played out in the striking range. She has a solid enough boxer. Yes, Angela Hill could lean on the Muay Thai striking base. She'll throw a bunch of volume as well, but it's going to be Loopy landing the more impactful punches, the more powerful punches on the feet. And I do expect her to implement the wrestling here and land takedowns. Yes, Angela Hill has improved her takedown defense over the years, but not to the point where she's going to be able to defend multiple takedowns against Godinez, especially once she backs her up and pressures her against the cage. I expect her to peel her to the mat and really just wear on her for as long as it takes, whether she finds a submission or grinds it out for 15. I do like Godinez. I think she's going to be an anchor in the Juice Boy parlay this weekend. So she's a solid play on DraftKings as well, just because I think we can expect multiple takedowns in this one. Up next, we have a fun matchup in the middleweight division as Bruno Silva comes in as a -280 favorite. The comeback on Gerald Meerschaert is +235. And this fight is very straightforward because on the feet, I think you have to favor Bruno Silva. He's a very powerful striker, very explosive striker. 19 of his 22 wins have all come by knockout. And then on the flip side, you have Gerald Meerschaert, who is basically never out of any fight because he always has that dangerous submission grappling that he can lean on. His last 6 wins have all come by submission. Basically, it doesn't matter if he's losing rounds because he's always liable to pull off a Hail Mary submission if he's able to force the grappling exchanges. So I'm just kind of hedging this fight on DraftKings, definitely leaning towards the Bruno Silva side because I do think the most likely outcome is he's able to keep the fight standing, blitz forward until he catches the chin of Meerschaert and puts him out. Meerschaert has been knocked out multiple times. But on the flip side, like I said, you can never count this guy out. If he can just somehow force this fight to the mat like other opponents were able to do against Silva, I think Meerschaert could potentially find a sub as well. So I'm not completely fading Meerschaert. It's going to be a fight that I definitely want to be overweight to the field because I think the winner scores well either way. Which brings us to the main card, guys. And if you're still watching, please do me a favor. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to grow my channel, and just doing those 2 things goes a long way, and it doesn't cost you a dime. So I definitely appreciate it. Let's get to the main card. So now we have Ariana Lipski, a minus 175 favorite. The comeback on Priscilla Cachoeira is plus 150. This fight was also booked for last week, along with the Josh Quinlan Jason Witt fight. This fight got postponed. Lipski apparently didn't get medically cleared, so now it's going down on Saturday. So again, I'm not going to go as in-depth on this one as I did last week. You can check out last week's video if you want to hear more, but basically, I just think Lipski, if she were to grapple here, I think that she could cover this price tag. The problem is she's only ever landed 1 takedown, and that came in her UFC debut. I don't think that we can bank on her to wrestle here and come in with the best game plan, even though she said in interviews, I believe she had a camp change to American Top Team. She said in interviews she wants to improve her wrestling. That's all great, but I don't know if we can bank on her to do it just because she hasn't done it across her career for the most part. They call her the queen of violence for a reason, dating back to her KSW days. Like, she wanted to stand and trade in there, and if she does that against Priscilla Cachoeira, yes, she'll be able to have success offensively, but I know Cachoeira can take the punches and keep moving forward and swinging heavies. I don't know if Lipski can take the damage coming back the other way from Cachoeira. Lipski's been knocked out 3 times in her career. I suspect she's a little bit chinny, so give me the dog here. I don't hate the dog shot. Like I said, if Lipski wrestles, I think she can clearly dominate Cachoeira on the mat. I just don't know if she's going to do that. So the official pick is going to be Lipski by decision, but like I said, on DraftKings, I'm definitely going to be overweight to the Cachoeira side. Up next in the light heavyweight division, we have Azamat Murzakanov coming in as a small favorite at minus 145 with Devin Clark on the comeback at plus 125. And this is a matchup that I'm definitely interested in terms of DraftKings, really on both sides, because Murzakanov is an undefeated prospect at 11-0. Most of his wins have come by early knockout, whether it's been on the feet with his heavy left hand, or he typically likes to take guys down and really just ground and pound, get him out of there that way. But this is a guy that came off Contender Series last season as well, but prior to that, he served a lengthy USADA suspension. UFC actually wanted to bring him over years ago, and they ended up not doing that because of the failed USADA suspension. And now he's coming in. He looks a little bit slower than he did previously. This guy's like 35 years old, so he's no spring chicken here. And he definitely, in his UFC debut against Tafon Nchukwi, he lost those first 2 rounds. I think he was getting a little bit exposed in that fight, and then obviously was able to find the big knee to put out Nchukwi there, get the win, did what he had to do. But now it's kind of like people have bought into Devin Clark a little bit too much here, because I was interested on the Devin Clark side early in the week at bigger numbers, but now at plus 125, I'm probably just going to pass. But in terms of DraftKings, I do think Devin Clark is a live underdog here, because there's multiple things that I think he could take advantage of Murzakanov here. Murzakanov has leaned on his wrestling in the past. I'm not sure he's going to be able to do that against Devin Clark, who comes from a collegiate wrestling background. I think Clark will be the more physical fighter, the stronger fighter, better cardio. It basically just comes down to if Devin Clark can avoid getting hurt, because we've seen the durability come into question on the Clark side. He's been knocked out multiple times. Typically when he gets dominated in a rough fashion, I'll put it that way. But if he can avoid getting knocked out here, I do think skill for skill, he's right up there with Murzakanov, if not the better fighter. So I understand why people are interested in betting him as a dog. Personally, I'm probably just going to pass because the line is pretty competitive now. But in terms of DraftKings, I'm going to have exposure to both sides. maybe Murzakanov can clip him early and reach that ceiling on DraftKings. But if not, then I think Clark could put up potentially a decent score if he's able to mix in takedowns at an underdog price. And up next, we have two debutante fighters with Yasmin Horiuchi, a -210 favorite, and Yasmin Lucindo on the comeback at +180. And I like Horiuchi here. I'm optimistic that her striking that we saw in the regional scene, yes, it came against low-level competition. I am optimistic that that will translate to the UFC. Her striking seems pretty good to me, especially in terms of low-level women's MMA. She seems to be very powerful. 6 of her 8 wins have come by knockout. She has some nasty elbows that she'll look for in the clinch, or if she ends up on top of you, she's going to look to rain those down as well. But she's got some straight punches, a nice uppercut. Like I said, she can piece together combinations pretty well here, and I think she's going to be the quicker fighter, the more powerful fighter against the younger Lucindo, who has a 12-4 record. She's fought a little bit better competition. She's on a 7-fight win streak. One of those came against former UFC fighter Sarah Frota. But the skill set, I think, still needs a little bit of work. She has shown some solid controlled grappling if she's able to get the fight to the mat. The problem is I don't think she's going to be able to do that here against Horiuchi, who's shown off some pretty solid takedown defense, at least on the regional scene. And if this fight plays outstanding and in the striking realm, I think I got to go with Horiuchi all day here. So in terms of DraftKings, I do have a little bit of interest because super low level, both fighters making their UFC debut, this could get sloppy, and as we know, sloppy fights sometimes tends to translate to high DraftKings scores. So I'm not going to shy away from this fight completely because I think the ownership is going to be relatively low just because people don't know much about either fighter. And I think there's at least a case to be made that this could be a pretty decent scoring fight. Which brings us to our co-main event. We have David Onama, -210 favorite. The comeback on Nate Landwehr is +180. And this one, basically, it's like, I understand why I'm interested in taking a shot on Nate Landwehr here, but I just haven't got there yet myself because it's like, I think he probably just gets knocked out, even though I think skill for skill, he might even be the better fighter here. He's certainly fighting at a higher pace. He's going to be landing more volume, throwing more volume, probably even has the better cardio. Really, the only thing that I question is the durability. He's been knocked out twice in his career. Obviously, the knee against Herbert Burns wasn't a great look for him there, but just his fighting style in general, he tends to eat a lot of shots and just try to walk right through them. And at some point, it's just not really going to pay off, especially against a powerful fighter like David Onama, who does have the power edge, who does have a bunch of knockouts to his record. So because I prefer the power and the durability, because I favor the Onama side in both of those categories, I think I have to lean him. Onama by knockout is the official pick, but I can maybe be persuaded on the Nate Landwehr side come Saturday. We'll see. In terms of DraftKings, I don't hate taking some stabs on him just because I think in a win, he probably scores pretty well just based on his high-paced nature alone. Which brings us to the main event. We have Marlon Chito Vera coming in as a -240 favorite. The comeback on Dominic Cruz, the former champion, is +200. And any way you slice it, I think you have to see value on the former champion and Dominic Cruz here, especially in the +200 range now, where we've seen a lot of money come in on the Chito Vera side. And I gotta say, I'm not really sure why, at least in terms of the money line. I think Chito is probably finish reliant in this fight. Not that he can't win a decision, but I think if he's landing hard enough on Cruz, he probably wins by knockout. And that's really the only concern I have on the Cruz side is his durability. We've seen him get dropped. We've seen him get knocked out. We've seen him get rocked. But outside of those times where he looked compromised, the dude is still a very good minute winner, a very good round winner. And that's something that Chito historically has not been, especially being a slow starter. I know we have 5 rounds to work with, but in terms of the fight IQ and the round winning ability, I have to side with Dominic Cruz here because in the striking, I think his footwork will be able to give a lot of fits to Chito Vera, who won't be able to land a lot of those big shots. Cruz has historically been very good at limiting the damage of his opponents. And it doesn't mean that Chito can't find a big shot, but I just think he's not going to be able to find as many of them in order enough to win rounds consistently here. And then you have to factor in the wrestling. Dominic Cruz, a high-level wrestler. Chito defends at under 70%. I'd expect Cruz, especially over 5 rounds, to be able to mix in the wrestling as well. So if I think the striking is going to be competitive, Cruz on the outside, switching stances, landing his jab, landing the leg kicks, mixing in the takedowns, I have to favor him to win rounds. If I'm just avoiding him getting knocked out here, yes, I understand it's a real possibility, but at plus 200, man, I have to take the guy who I think is the better round winner in this fight. So give me Dominick Cruz. Dominick Cruz by decision is the official pick. I'm definitely going to be overweight to the Dominick Cruz side on DraftKings. Both these guys are going to be popular, but I'm definitely going to be more on the Dominick Cruz side because I think he pulls off the upset this week. And as always, guys, on fightnumbers.com, I'll have DraftKings player rankings broken down by salary tier. I'll have ownership projections. I'll have MMA line movement stuff, inside the distance line movement stuff, fantasy points per minute. It's all completely free at fightnumbers.com. Check that out. Let me know what you think. And as always, thanks for the support. Thanks for watching. Good luck, and we'll see you next time.